The voice.
Someone? We got someone?
Yeah, can you hear? This is Jason at the airport. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we got you now. Yep.
All right. Sorry for that, everybody. We've been trying to. We're having some issues on the computer and on our side, so apologize for that. But in the room, good afternoon. This is Jason Troy, Executive Director of the Syracuse Regional Airport Authority. In the room, I've got Robin Watkins, our CFO, and John Carney, who is a Chief Operating Officer for the authority.
Great. So thank you guys for joining us. After the delay, I was basically saying if you guys want to give us an update, a rundown through some of the budget points and give us an update on what's going on at the airport and how things are developing out there.
Sure. So why don't I have Robin run through the budget items for you all, and then I'll go ahead and give an update for when we're done.
Okay. So we submitted our budget this year to the city. At this point in time, we have only one employee that remains on our roster. And the long-term plan for the airport and the city were to move all of the employees over from the city onto the SRA roster. And we successfully completed that during the course of the last year. The last individual that we have opted to remain on the city budget because he's going to retire next year. We reimburse the city for 100% of his costs, including all benefits. We have total expenditures related to that for his benefits, and that's one of the reasons why you see the overall cost going down from $10 million to $4 million. We still continue to reimburse for the fire and police retirement system, which relates to our ARC department out here. We will have continued expenses related to workers' compensation for those cases that are hanging off, and also the medical insurance, which is also related to the last individual. On the third sheet for the aviation fund, again, the operating income went from $10 million to $4 million. All of our expenses are 100% reimbursed, and operating costs went from $6 million to $1 million as a result of all those changes. And then we would continue to reimburse the city for the bonds, which is listed on the debt line. So that's it from our numbers.
Yes. Are there any questions on the submitted budget from the airport?
Any of my fellow counselors? Anybody have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Driscoll. This is Pat Hogan. At my previous stint with the council, I was the airport chair, when we were going through the whole airport authority thing. And I just want to, I got to catch up. Is it still like any kind of times you do bonding over $10 million, do you still have to come to the city for approval?
Yes, that is correct. That is part of the enabling legislation.
And any future bonding, of course, you'll pay the debt service out of the Aviation Enterprise Fund.
Yes.
Yes. Any debt that were to incur out here at the airport would be the responsibility of the airport authority.
And I'm wondering about the former city employees as far as their retirement, state retirement benefits. Are they? How's that be? I guess Corey could answer this. Corey, how we handle that? Did their time with the city end when they went off the payroll and went to the airport authority as far as retirement goes?
I mean, I'd probably defer to Jason and John on those, because I think sometimes it varied by the
union
nature
negotiation.
By which, yeah, I don't know, John or Jason, do you guys have a?
I think I understand the question, Counselor. the airport reimbursed the city for all of those expenses beforehand, and now we've just taken them over since they've come to the authority. But the airport will cover that as they did before, as we do now.
Yep.
So all of their benefits, I mean, what's owed to the state retirement system comes out of the Aviation Enterprise Fund in the future, as long as they keep on the payroll.
That's
payroll.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that is
now,
correct.
when they go off all those union jobs, when they go off the payroll, was there an agreement with the unions that they remain union jobs, or what?
Yes, for the most part, the unions, we transferred all of them over to the authority. So,
1773, Local 400 all have, they're still union represented. Operations, if you were, I don't remember if you were still on the council, Councilor Hogan at the time, but they left the city and came over to the authority. But those bargaining units, 400 and 1773 did come over.
As well as the trades.
And the trades as well, correct.
So in other words, if I know the IBEW guy out there, he decides to retire, then whoever's hired in that position will be an IBEW member?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate what you do for the community out there. And, you know, it's been a tough year for all of us. And you've soldiered on, so I congratulate you. Thank you, Councilor Driscoll.
Thank you, Councilor Hogan. Appreciate it. And any other councilors, President, anybody else have any questions? Okay.
No, Joe, I was just going to go in the same vein as Councilor Hogan asked about the employees and the transfers and the unions. So that was a question that was cleared up through Councilor Hogan's questioning.
Understood. All right, so maybe you guys could, it's obviously been an unusual year for everybody. And I'd imagine the airports must have been another field that was greatly affected. Why don't you guys give us some updates on you know, how things have been out at the airport and what's going on with the crazy year we've had.
Councilor Driscoll, sure. Can I ask one question on the budget before you move on?
Sure. The City Clerk Kapanis, yes, go ahead.
So when the authority was originally discussed and you know, the 40-year lease agreement was put in place, it was determined that you would try to keep the services that the city gave you, supported your operation going, which was around $1.5 million a year. It's nothing to do with airport employees. They were always paid for by the airport. We're talking about the city employees that supported the airport when it was a department. It used to give us $1.5 million a year for the support services, mine, the law department, other departments. So you've contracted all those services out and we don't get any of that money anymore?
So a lot of those services, we do have our own attorney and those types of things. You're talking about the payment that went through Maximus that we did the time studies on?
Yeah, yes. Every year we had to justify how much work we did on behalf of the Department of Aviation, and the city was reimbursed that. We do that currently with the water department. We reimburse city employees' time and effort to help the airport authority move forward. And that, I thought there was going to be some agreement to try to keep those services with the city if possible, so that we can retain that money or as much of it as possible.
That's not my understanding of it. Is that the time study was done every few years, and they looked at the amount of services provided by the city in that window. And then as the authority brought on its staff, got stood up, that over time that cost would go down so that the airport authority, as much as it could to an extent, be a standalone entity. We're at a point now where we have taken a lot of those services and brought in our own staff to take over that. So that Maximus number was always supposed to go down as the authority stood up and brought on its own staff.
I don't know if anybody, any other questions? Corey, is that your understanding from the administration's perspective?
Yeah, it was our understanding that over time the staff would slowly transfer over to the authority and no longer be city employees. And as those happen, there'd be less services that the city was providing to the authority, and eventually it would be down to, you know, I think right now we're at a place where I don't think there are any, you know, and so therefore the airport reimburses us for less because we're not providing as many services on our dime.
Yeah, and I guess as an example of that is now, where in the past the airport authority did not pay for building permits and inspections, is that right?
During projects that was never charged to the airport, we've now taken that on, and we do pay for those services.
So now those services, we are invoiced for those services, where we pay them directly. So it may just be a different mechanism that's being covered.
It's really not apples and apples. I'm not talking about airport staff. That was always paid for by the airlines. I'm talking about city hall, city department staff used to be reimbursed for supporting airport services. Obviously, it's not going to happen anymore. Okay, I guess you're paying some fees, but that's not the same thing. You know, and it was done on an annual basis, not every couple of years, because I filled it out annually on what my work was in writing legislation and how much that was billed to the authority.
Right, it's not happening anymore.
So if I could sort of talk a little bit about what the city clerk mentioned. And what used to happen is, like, if there was a project that maybe wasn't of the size it needed to be bid out, the airport, like the electricians at the airport would get the electricians from DPW and et cetera out there, and then we would back charge the airport for their services through the Aviation Enterprise Fund. Now I imagine if you need extra guys with the trades or anything like that, you just hire right out of the hall. Is that how you do that?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
that's right. I think that's what the city clerk was sort of getting at with that. So,
Councilor Driscoll, may I?
Absolutely, Councilor Majoka is joining us. Please go ahead, sir.
I'm just looking for clarification. Does those remaining staff includes firefighters from the city?
No, so that's the staff that has been moved over. We only have one remaining employee with the city. The fire department is a standalone station that the airport authority reimburses the city for. We get payrolls, we provide all the equipment, cover the station costs, and then I believe it's every month we get an invoice
For the payroll.
For the payroll that we reimburse.
Okay, thank you.
And is it what is the setup for the security details? There's some SPD out there still. I know that was a big conversation.
Yeah, so the security company that provides service out here at the airport is Securitas. The Syracuse Police Department officers work under secondary work permits through Securitas to provide law enforcement support at the airport.
And that is in conjunction with TSA, right? Is that, or is that just TSA personnel? Is there any other federal folks that work together with our law enforcement, or?
Two separate entities.
Yeah.
We pay for law enforcement support out here, and we do that through secondary employment with SPD.
Yeah, TSA and SPD work together, but yes, we also have Customs and Border Protection here at the airport, as well as I think there's some other federal agencies that from time to time will be out here.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
but to Councilor Driscoll's point, and maybe with an eye on what was in the paper this morning regarding the police department, has there been studies done over the last few years from when we went from Syracuse Police to Securitas hiring Syracuse Police as far as the savings? That was one of the big reasons for the airport authority's creation. I don't know if anybody's got any kind of like long-term institutional knowledge outside of John out there, but have we ever go on, John.
No, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, Counselor, but we went from about $4.5 million a year we paid in law enforcement down to about $2 and change million. So we saved over $2 million with that move, with that transition.
So like $2 million a year, obviously, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John.
All right. Any of my other counselors, any questions? Okay. So yeah, going back to the point before, I guess twofold. So how has this current year with all the challenges with COVID, how have you guys weathered that storm? And I guess I'd also be curious to know if any of the federal relief funds came out to help you guys. If so, what amounts and how that all worked out?
Sure. So obviously this past year was quite a challenge as air service pretty much dried up at some months. April of 2020, we only had 4,000 people through the airport. That's typically what we see in a day at this airport. Since that time, it has slowly come back. We plateaued July through February, and that's really caused by the travel restrictions in and out of New York with the quarantine requirements. But we still were able to maintain service to all the major hubs, as well as started to see some capacity increases. The good story over the last few months, really starting in February, we have seen a return to travel and the airlines reintroducing services. So give you an example, in February of this year, 2021, we had 1,100 flights. June scheduled, we have over 2,000. All our flights are averaging a little above 80% load factors, and we continue to see new markets reintroduced. So for instance, in June, we will be getting back Boston on American Airlines, Denver on United Airlines, the Myrtle Beach market on Allegiant, and it continues to grow. We are expecting this continued upward trajectory in our discussions with the airlines right now, and we currently sit about 45% of 2019 levels, which, if you remember, were a banner year for us. From a financial perspective, we went into COVID in a very strong financial position, given the record numbers that we've had. Therefore, throughout the pandemic, we never had to do any kind of layoffs, furloughs, any impact to any of the employees here at the airport. And part of what helped that was our CARES funds. So those are those federal funds that you were referring to. We have, there have been 3 rounds of federal funds that have included airports. The first round, we received $12.9 million to be used for offsetting of operational costs and losses due to COVID. We have used approximately $8 million of that round to offset the airline costs, as well as do some capital projects. We did replace the exit portals here at the airport, so those have been completed. Round 2 of the CARES funds, we will see about $5.2 million. That portion of that will go to our concession partners to help with some of the offset of the payments to the airport authority. And the third round, which will be coming out, the airport will get about $13 million in that. Those funds will be used to offset the losses that we've seen from the airlines' reductions, as well as cover the expenses that the airport has incurred throughout COVID. The bright spot in our community, cargo. Cargo continues to be very strong even through COVID. We are up 36% in cargo exports from Syracuse International. So that's goods being produced in this community and flown out. And we continue to see that trend happen. So to stay ahead of all this, we are kicking off our master plan update. That should start in the next few weeks, and that will look at kind of future growth and opportunities for all of the airport. In addition to the master plan, the biggest project that is coming up right now at the airport will start on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we are going to be closing the main runway at the airport for reconstruction and rehabilitation. It's a 160-day closure of the main runway. So really the only impact is going to be the flight patterns over the airport will change. We will be running everything off the secondary runway, which is more than capable to handle all of the traffic for this airport. With that, that's kind of the high-level update of what's going on at the airport. Do you have any questions or anything specific you'd like us to address? I guess the one other thing I will, I will add. Okay, we were recently awarded. I don't know if you all have heard, but we're very excited. We, as the airport, were awarded one of 5 spots in the country to be the FAA Research and Development Airport for drone and UAS detection and mitigation. So it's a 2-year program. We think this will be a big benefit to the community because now companies that are doing UAS and drone detection and mitigation can test their products in a real-world environment here at Syracuse. So that was just awarded to us. It should be starting. We've got our first kickoff call with the FAA next week. So that's kind of a bright spot through COVID.
And how does that work? Where does the drone? You guys have, I mean, I imagine there's got to be separate space for that. Yeah. What is the different area where the drones are tested for the airport?
So that's what we'll be working with the FAA. It depends on the technology of where it may need to be on the airport. Some of them could be ground-based. If it's something that is in the air, we have a couple areas around the airport that could happen. You know, ultimately, it won't impact any of the day-to-day operations of the airport. It's really to test there in the real-world environment.
Okay. Any other questions from my fellow councilors? Anything else folks are interested in?
Councilor Driscoll, just one more, Jason. What the funding that you obtained from the federal government, were the publicly owned airports in the country, was that available to them too, or how'd that work? Do you know?
Yeah, so the CARES funds were available to all public use airports that that are in what's called the NIPIAs. There's some federal qualifiers so that how airports fall into it. But yes, it is available to most public use airports.
Okay, thank you.
And you mentioned,
Jason, just out of curiosity, it's a little bit, just a little bit off, a little bit. So I remember there was about a year or two ago a huge construction that did a huge facelift to the airport. Now, is that complete? Is it done? It's over with, or is there more renovation coming?
No, the terminal renovation is complete. So that project has been closed out. Okay, and I remember a lot of it was funded by the state, right? Or was it just federal dollars? No, I believe it was all state.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Councilor Driscoll.
Another question, guys. So you mentioned that in the first we're given 12, and you ended up spending 8, correct?
That is correct. We've only used 8 to this point. We're using it to offset the cost. We still have revenue coming into the airport, but to make up that delta, that's what we're using the CARES funds for.
Yeah. So is it similar to the other federal money that there's a time limit on it? What do you guys do with the for? Is that, you know, are you planning on continuing, you know, to continue to offset throughout the year ahead, or, you know, what's the time limit on any funds that are not spent, and how does that work out for you guys?
So we have to submit a plan that shows how we'll be using those funds. So it is going to be used to offset the operational costs going forward for the next year or so. We've taken a position as the airport that we are going to hold our rates and charges steady for the airlines. and use the CARES funds to supplement that difference. That allows a better cost competitive environment for the airlines to recover, and that's why we're seeing the airlines return to Syracuse a little bit quicker than some of the other airports, because it is an offset to their costs and operations here.
Gotcha. And regarding timeline, is there an expiration date on the funding?
It's about 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 years.
Spend it within 2 years.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Any of my other fellow counselors, clerk, anybody have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, I guess we'll we can start to wrap this up then, unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to add. I would just like to say, you know, Jason, it's been a crazy year. We haven't gotten to stop out to the airport, but I would definitely love to organize another trip to take some counselors out there and just you know, get an update, get a sense, get a look around, and you know, check in on you guys out there and you know, get a firsthand in-person experience with you guys if you feel that that's safe sometime in the near future.
Yeah, we would love that because we've got some new things out here that we'd love to show you all. So, but yeah, let's find a time. I think that would be really really great to get you all out here. Great.
Let's set that up sometime in the near future. All right. Unless any of my other fellow counselors have any questions, we can start to wrap this one up and call it a day. Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to Jason and Rowan, your whole staff. Thanks everyone for coming out, and hope to see you guys in person sometime soon. Take care, everyone.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.